Chapter 15. Kadi. Hearing. Tita, Jian Chen couldn't help but ask. Tita, you say you have a great amount of strength, but how heavy of an object can you lift? When I was back at home, I could lift a 200-kilogram rock, he said quite arrogantly with a face full of pride. Gian Chen's face went blank as he heard that answer. This was a monster of a student. A 200-kilogram rock was impossible to lift for the average adult. But for a young boy like Tita to be able to lift such a titanic rock, Gian Chen could only feel awe from this fact. Tita, how old are you? Jian Chen had started to look at Tita in a different light now. 16 years old, Tita said as he munched on his food. His chewing caused his words to be almost inaudible. Gian Chen's impression of him grew even more as he said, Tita, did you have this strength since you were a kid? That's right. My strength was always stronger than most, but then so was my appetite. Because I couldn't always eat until I was full in my home, I usually went up to the mountains and hunted for my own food, Tita said flatly. Taking in a deep breath, Gian Chen mentally confirmed that Tita's strength was definitely a God-given power. Otherwise, a young boy like him would never have been able to lift such a heavy rock. But what surprised Gian Chen even more was that Tita would frequently hunt by himself in the mountains. For someone who was barely 16 to be able to hunt with ease in the mountains, this made Gian Chen's respect for him grow by an extreme amount. After all, not only did wild beasts appear in the mountains, magical beasts would occasionally appear as well, and the latter's strengths were incomparable to those of regular wild beasts. Tita rubbed at his stomach and stood up from his stool with a laugh. Changyang Xiangtian, I've eaten my fill, so I'll be returning to my dorm to sleep. Tomorrow is another day of the competition after all. Jian Chen nodded his head. I hope that you will make it into the top 3 in tomorrow's contest. Tita fiercely nodded, and a resolute look could be seen in his eyes. I will definitely work hard and strive for the top 3. A single Class 1 monster core can be sold for at least 10 amethyst coins. Not long after Tita had left, Gian Chen quickly ate his own food and returned to his room. Right as he closed the door behind him, a knock could be heard on it. Fourth brother, are you here? Asked Changyang in a strong voice. Hearing the voice, Gian Chen was surprised. It had been 2 full days since he had last seen any trace of his brother. Quickly opening the door, he invited Changyang inside his room. Fourth brother, I'm sorry, but I haven't been keeping track with your progress in the competition, he hurriedly said before Gian Chen could open his mouth to ask a question. Gian Chen nodded his head and said, I've already advanced onto the top 8. Tomorrow will be the final day of the matches. As he listened to Gian Chen, Changyang suddenly grew happy for his younger brother's success. Excitedly, he said, Fourth brother, you are truly amazing. It's no wonder you came here before second sister and third brother. Fishing a thumb-sized crystal out of his pockets, Changyang placed it within Gian Chen's hands. Fourth brother, this is a Class 1 monster core. 2 days ago, a few friends and I went to the forest behind the academy and killed a Class 1 magical beast together. This is the monster core I fought to get for you, so take it. It's already getting late, so your big brother won't disturb your rest anymore. Tomorrow is the final day of the competition, so you must work hard and earn the number 1 title. Changyang then exited from the room after slowly closing the door shut. The moment before Changyang could close the door, Jian Chen caught a glimpse of a 3-inch long claw mark that ran down Changyang arm. Silently looking at the Class 1 monster core in his hands, Jian Chen felt a wave of warmth that lingered. For a while, Jian Chen's heart was actually unable to calm down. Although it was only a Class 1 monster core, Jian Chen could feel Changyang concern radiating from it. Thinking back to the wound on Changyang arm, Jian Chen knew that the wound came from hunting a magical beast. Whenever Jian Chen thought about the gift, he couldn't help but feel warm inside, another emotion that he had never experienced in his previous life. After standing in the center of his room with a stunned expression for a while, Jian Chen finally took a deep breath, gradually forcing himself into a state of calm. Then he got onto his bed to start cultivating once more. Although he had the monster core now, he did not want to use it just yet, so he stored it away in his space belt. With the competition in mind, Gian Chen fully believed that he could take the #1 spot. After all, in his previous world, he was a unique expert that stood at the peak of the world. And although he had lost a great amount of his power after reincarnating, he still had the knowledge of every type of swordplay, as well as understanding the deep, profound sword laws, so much that they were ingrained into his soul. He had not lost his understanding of the ways of the sword. And so this is how Gian Chen would advance through the continent in the future. The next morning, Gian Chen finished his breakfast quickly before arriving at the competition. Perhaps it was because today was the final day of the competition, but a lot more people came today than the 2 previous days combined. Many of these newcomers were older students. The fighting grounds had been fully fixed last night, and the original 5 arenas had been changed to 4. However, the 4 arenas were now larger than before. The arenas from yesterday were on a completely different level that couldn't be compared with the new sizes. At this moment, Jian Chen felt something behind him. Turning around, he saw his older brother Changyang forging his way forward of the crowd, trying to reach him. Taking note of Jian Chen's stare, Changyang smiled widely. Quickly detaching himself from the crowd, he ran up to Jian Chen's side and slapped him on the shoulder. "Fourth brother, today is the day you must work hard. Your big brother won't demand of you to get the #1 spot. Getting into the top 3 is good enough." To Changyang, getting a monster core was only a minor reward. The most important thing was getting a good rank. Although the price of a monster core was not easily ignored, it was not something that the eldest son of the Changyang clan deeply desired. Jian Chen laughed and said, "Big brother, you don't have to worry. I definitely will not let you down." The time of the competition came quickly. This time, the top 8 would fight it out in the semi-finals. After drawing lots to decide their opponents, Jian Chen immediately walked onto the arena. Not long after, Jian Chen's opponent slowly came up into the arena, but to Jian Chen's surprise, his opponent was a girl. More precisely, his opponent was the girl from last time, Kadi. Kadi was wearing a dark red style of clothing, and although she was only 16 or 17 years old, her body was developing nicely. What should be sticking out was sticking out, and what should be thin was thin. Her skin-tight uniform sketched her out to be a true example of a beautiful woman with delicate white skin, along with her naturally beautiful face with tender white skin. At this point, she had already enraptured the attention of all the boys in the crowd, and without a doubt, Kadi was definitely beautiful enough to cause cities to fight over her. However, as true as it was for most people born into a prestigious clan, she carried around with her an arrogant air. Jian Chen stood empty-handed on top of the arena. The reason why he was empty-handed was because of the academy rules. They believed that the best way to judge a person's strength was by empty-handed combat, and so bladed weapons were not allowed. And since it was not possible to form a saint weapon without being a saint, all of the freshmen were forced to fight without weapons. Kadi looked at Jian Chen with a haughty look. "You really didn't let us down. For your arrogance in the dining hall the other day, I'll be sure to teach you a lesson today." Kadi's voice carried a sharp but clear-sounding tone. Hearing this, Jian Chen's face revealed a grin of disdain. Within the people who were born within prestigious clans, many of them truly did not know how vast the heavens and earth were. Boom! A loud sound rung throughout the arena, signaling the start of the match. Because all 4 of the arenas were in the same place, the moment the gong was heard, all 8 participants simultaneously started to move and began to fight. Kadi quickly strode towards Jian Chen, but when she was within 3 meters from him, she suddenly jumped up into the air to deliver a flying jump kick towards his face. Although Kadi was young, she was fairly strong since she was already at the 9th Saint Force layer. Jian Chen stood in place without moving a single step. As Kadi's foot got closer to his face, he tilted his neck sideways, allowing the kick to merely graze past the side of his head. Kadi's reaction speed was fairly fast. The moment she realized her kick didn't connect, she swung out at his nose with a Saint Force-enhanced fist. Not only was her fist coming in at rapid speeds, but with a huge amount of energy stored within her fist, any normal person would come out with serious injuries after being hit by that. As far as Gian Chen was concerned, she would not hold back. No matter if she ended up defeating Gian Chen and moving on into the top 4, or if she was just teaching Gian Chen a lesson, she would definitely not allow herself to hold back. Gian Chen dealt with Kadi's attack with ease, and although his opponent was one layer higher than him, Gian Chen was not like an average child. His battle experiences from his past world were abundant, so if he wanted to continue this match without fighting back, then Kadi wouldn't even be able to touch his clothes, much less beat him within 5 rounds. After Kadi had tried to attack him a few dozen times without even being able to even touch Gian Chen's clothes, she grew extremely annoyed and stopped her barrage of blows. Panting slightly, she stuck both her hands by her waists and glared at Gian Chen. "Hey, are you going to actually fight or not? If you're not going to fight, then get off the arena instead of jumping around all over the place." Gian Chen laughed as he looked at the fuming Kadi and said, "The person that'll be leaving the arena will be you, not me. How do you plan to beat me if you can't even touch my clothes?" You. Kadi's naturally beautiful face grew red with anger as she pointed at him with her finger, and she was momentarily unable to speak. But then she grew calm, and she rolled her eyes, sneering, "So what if I can't touch you? You can't even stand to fight me head-on, and can only dodge my blows like a little coward." "Hey, is that right?" Jian Chen's face revealed a hint of a smile as he looked at her with a strange expression. Kadi looked on haughtily, speaking with complete conviction. "Of course. If you aren't a coward, then you'd better try actually fighting me." Jian Chen glanced over at the other 3 rings and saw that the other matches were beginning to wrap up. Turning his head back to look at Kadi again, he laughed. "If you really want to fight me head-on, then fine, I'll grant you your wish." Chapter 16. Advancing into the Finals. Hearing Jian Chen words, Kadi's eyes brightened. "You said so yourself, so don't you dare try to say otherwise later." Kadi clearly had no desire to let Jian Chen prepare himself, so before she could even finish her sentence, she had already started to dash towards him. Just like the first blow, she leapt up into the air and lashed her leg out to kick him in the face, but this time, the speed of her kick was much faster than her original one. Jian Chen gave an odd smile as the kick came closer. Just like he said earlier, Jian Chen didn't bother to dodge, but instead, as the kick was right in front of his face, both of his hands lashed out and grabbed onto Kadi's calf. Exerting a decent amount of strength while twisting around, he whirled her around in one smooth motion. As he threw her, Kadi cried out in panic as she was spun around by Jian Chen. Many of the surrounding students watching the event became dumbstruck. Not only did it seem like Jian Chen did not care for the fairer SX and threw such a beautiful lady into the air in such a crude way, he had also defeated the last 6 opponents in the same manner. Under the arena, Kadi felt the veins in his forehead throb as he watched his younger sister get mistreated in such a way. A murderous intent was focused on Jian Chen as he watched him. If it weren't for the vice headmaster Bai En presiding over the match nearby, then Kadi would have charged onto the arena long ago to teach Jian Chen a lesson. Jian Chen's 2 arms were almost like strong pincers, clamping down onto her legs as he spun her around twice before finally letting go. At that moment, one could only see Kadi's beautiful body streak across the sky in an arc, before finally flying out of the arena and crashing into a group of people in the audience. He had learned this trick from Tita. After watching Tita in some of his matches, he saw that he had done a similar method to easily toss his opponents out of the arena. However, Jian Chen had to admit this method was a very easy trick to pull off for a quick but easy victory and could be done to certain people with ease. With only a tiny bit of disdain for the people in the audience who helped Kadi back to her feet, Jian Chen smirked as the referee proclaimed him the winner before walking off the stage slowly. Blankly looking at Jian Chen walk off the arena, Kadi's face fell. Since she was born, she had been pampered by thousands of people as she grew. For her to suffer humiliation from being tossed into the air after being spun around like a top, she had felt that she lost face as well as being wronged, despite not getting injured. As she thought about this, Kadi's eyes started to tear up, and she eventually began to leak out streams of tears as she cried silently to herself. As Jian Chen walked down from the arena, Kadi's brother, Kadi blocked his path. Glaring at him icily, he growled, "Kid, you really have some fucking courage to treat my sister like that." Gian Chen lazily glanced over at the furious Kadi Yun and snorted. Without saying anything, Gian Chen walked away from him. Words were not worth wasting on him, because Gian Chen couldn't stand to hear Kadi Yun try to use his clan's influence to bully others. Watching Gian Chen walk farther and farther away from him, Kadi Yun's own face grew even more somber. With the end of Gian Chen's match, the final 4 names were called out. In the end, it was Changyang Xiangtian, Tita, Kadi Liang, and Tianmu Xiong that remained. As far as Tita was concerned, Jian Chen was not at all surprised that he had made it. However, Jian Chen did not think that Kadi Liang would unexpectedly make it into the top 4. There was also the 4th participant, Tianmu Xiong. His age wasn't all that different from Kadi Li. He had a medium-sized body and a pale complexion. Although he was young, there was no doubt that he was handsome, with a perfect balance of his facial structures. Sitting on top of the platform was the vice-headmaster Bai En, who slowly looked over the 4 remaining students. With a small nod and a laugh, he announced, "It would appear that this year's freshmen are much stronger than the freshmen before them. I can only hope that our Kargath Academy will be able to boast of someone just as strong after." After announcing the 4 remaining students, they were given an hour of rest before continuing on with the competition. However, by some miraculous chance, Jian Chen's drawn opponent was Kadi Liang, while Tita's opponent was Tianmu Xiong. Under the arena, Kadi Yun and his siblings gathered at the bottom and watched. Kadi Li's eyes were starting to become red and inflamed by this point. "Second brother, you have to teach him a lesson later," Kadi Li said with unrestrained fury to Kadi Liang before the match started. Noticing his sister's red eyes and her tear-stained face, Kadi Liang couldn't help but feel extremely furious as he spoke. "Sister Chiu Li, don't worry. Even if I get penalized by the academy, your second brother will definitely teach him a lesson." What a savage kid. To think that he would dare treat our sister like this, he really does have a death wish. "Sister, please don't worry, I guarantee you, that kid will definitely only feel suffering for as long as he lives in this academy. Although the headmaster sides with the poor people, he is by no means a commoner. Even if I beat him until he's a cripple, the headmaster won't say a thing. At the very most, he'll just scold us." Kadi Yun's face looked as if he swallowed poison. When it came to their sister, both Kadi Yun and Kadi Liang cared greatly for her. When Gian Chen had treated their sister in such a way, he had already earned extreme hatred from both of them. Soon, Gian Chen and Kadi Liang both walked onto the arena and waited for the start of the match. Right as the gong sounded, Kadi Liang dashed towards Gian Chen and tried to slam his fist into Gian Chen's stomach. Jian Chen nimbly dodged Kadi Liang's attack, while returning the blow with his own fist that was even faster than his opponent's. Peng! Before Kadi Liang could even respond, Jian Chen's fist had already made contact with his back. The force of his punch was so strong, it forced Kadi Liang to stagger backwards before falling to his knees. After one blow, Jian Chen didn't bother to hold back. Both of his legs went into motion as he quickly ran towards where Kadi Liang was kneeling. All of a sudden, the originally staggering Kadi Liang suddenly lost his footing once more and was sent flying again. After being hit, he flew 2 meters towards the edge of the ring, almost knocking him out of it, though half of his body was already hanging out of it. Watching this display of might, every student watching Jian Chen all cried out in surprise. They had never imagined that in a single engagement, the victor would be so readily decided. This was something that every student thought was amazing. The 9th layer St. Force student Kadi Liang was being beaten so easily by the 8th St. Force layer Jian Chen. Seeing half of Kadi Liang's body sticking out from the ring, both Kadi Li's and Kadi Yun's hearts leapt out from their chests and into their throats. How can second brother be this careless? How annoying. He'd better not lose to a brat like him. Kadi Li cried as she stamped her foot in anger. Though the longer she looked at Kadi Liang, the more easily one could tell her face was full of concern for her older brother. Kadi Yun let out a breath in exasperation. What is second brother doing for him to be this careless and lose to a brat who's only at the 8th St. Force? On top of the platform, the vice headmaster Bai En smiled excitedly as he said, "The freshmen we picked up this year are definitely jewels. One has been blessed by the heavens, while the other I can polish and shine in the future. While his attacks are simple, there is a strange sort of mystery to him. Every single time there is a crucial point in the match, he unleashes highly accurate moves with almost instantaneous reactions. These two students truly do require closer nurturing. I believe that in the future, these two will be great experts within the Tianyuan continent. I'd better discuss this with the headmaster later." On the arena, Kadi Liang scrambled to pick himself back up, his forehead already dripping with cold sweat. If his body had slipped just a few more inches, then there would be no doubt that his body would have fallen down from the arena. And then if he truly did lose to an 8th St. Force layer student in such a disgraceful manner, he would definitely have been labeled as a great disgrace. When Kadi Liang crawled back up and turned himself around, his surroundings suddenly blurred, and he was suddenly aware of an acute sense of pain in his stomach before he could fully comprehend what was happening. But then his body felt as light as a feather before he realized the stage was growing smaller and smaller. The next thing he knew, his body impacted the ground below, and his previously spotless white robes now sported a single dusty footprint. Blankly standing up from the ground, Kadi Liang looked all around himself before he fully comprehended what had just happened. Indignation burst forth from his eyes as he shot Gian Chen a malicious glare. Although he had reached the 9th layer, he had ultimately been beaten by a student who had only reached the 8th layer and felt his defeat was an extreme waste. Every time he thought of this, Kadi Liang's heart filled with endless anger. To him, this was definitely a huge disgrace. Kadi Yun walked up to Kadi Liang and said, "Second brother, you've disappointed me. You have really lost face for our Kadi clan." After dropping these words, Kadi Yun didn't spare a second glance at Kadi Liang and immediately left the area. Hearing Kadi Yun's words, Kadi Liang's face immediately turned beyond ugly. "Second brother, you were too careless. Although you said that you would help me teach him a lesson, it ultimately became you being the one that was taught," Kadi Kuli said resentfully in a disappointed voice, her tone quite indignant. Hearing this, Kadi Liang's face changed as well, before growling, "This was the extent of his luck. It was because of this arena that he won. If we were to change places, then there would be no way he would be an opponent for me. Third sister, don't worry. I will definitely teach him a lesson in the future." Kadi Kuli began to think. She felt that his reasoning had some truth to it. Slowly nodding her head, she said, "Second brother, you'll have to teach him a lesson for sure next time." Kadi Liang patted his chest and solemnly vowed, "Don't worry, third sister. Leave this to me." Not too long after Gian Chen had won his match, the match between Tita and Tianmu Xiong also started to wrap up. Although Tita's Saint Force was lower than his opponent by a single layer, his heavenly blessed strength helped make up for this deficiency. In the end, he relied on the experience he had learned from hunting beasts and was finally able to beat Tianmu Xiong by a narrow victory. Along with Jian Chen, he became one of the two finalists. By the end of the next match, one of the two will emerge victorious and be crowned the freshman ruler.